Hey, welcome back to another episode of A Warrior Spirit, where we let the inner warrior out to light. Today, I am blessed to be with Jason Johns. And the reason I'm blessed, he's an incredible husband, father, and his mission is to empower others to be the best version they can be. He started LifeBalance in order to do that. But I'm also blessed because it now makes me an international uh, because today Jason is joining us from Canada. How cold it is there today, Jason?
We're about minus 20 Celsius.
Which equates, do you know the equation?
Oh, it'd be getting almost really close to the same.
Okay.
I believe it's minus 30 is when Fahrenheit and Celsius kind of come together. So you guys would definitely be into the minuses with minus 20. Um, I had a conversation, I believe 30 Fahrenheit is around 4 degrees or 3 degrees Celsius. So we're at the we're on the minus side of things, and it's frigid, but to be honest with you, we had minus 33 before Christmas, so this isn't that bad.
It's warming up. Yeah. So I appreciate you joining me today, Jason. And I love, getting to know you this past year and who you are. Tell me a little bit about Life Balance. I know that you created it and named it for a specific reason.
Yeah, ultimately, a lot of my life was chaos, and I didn't I didn't realize I had a gift to create my own internal balance through a lot of this, and some of it I learned was safety mechanisms I'd put in, and doesn't directly serve me if I use the same vision. But if I manipulate my vision a little bit, I can really understand how I created my own life balance within that. And a lot of people don't like the life balance word. They really find that, well, how do you find this and create this, and what box are you trying to fit somebody in, and all that type of stuff. And one thing that I strongly believe in at Life Balance is there's no boxes in the world for anybody, because everybody is truly unique. I'm learning that more and more through perspective and learning perspective internationally. I love that you're going international. It's one of my true tried and passions is to go gain perspective internationally, because how do you know what's going on right here? What's balanced in Regina, Saskatchewan compared to what's balanced with you in Arizona, and what's balanced to somebody over in Sweden? If somebody was to say, well, it's going to be the same, I got to go somewhere else, because the reality is they're delusional. It's not going to be the same. So to create balance, it's really to find somebody and to figure out how can I empower them to find their internal balance, because that's truly different between everyone. And the way I want to achieve that is by digging through my past. Where was I able to find balance through chaos? And little did I know, I was a meditator for years, Daryl. My grandmother taught me to go to the hammock and lay down at the lake and just lay there, and it was to them, it was to me to go fill time, so I didn't harass them and bug them with all the energy that I had as a little kid. But at the end of the day, what they taught me was peace and serenity and that harmony and that balance that we truly can find being with ourselves, turning within a little bit, staring up into Mother Nature, because the hammock was tied between two trees. So you looked at the leaves floating in the wind. There was always a bit of a breeze at the lake. There was rarely a still moment. So like leaves would always be slightly moving. The water would always typically have a slight ripple unless it was first thing in the morning and you'd have glass. But you know what? When you have a glass water surface, it's empowering to see it, because you know it doesn't happen much. But what a beautiful sight it is, and it only lasts for a certain period of time that day, and then a wind will pick up and change that for you. So I really got to start admiring those pieces in life, and now I kind of look at that going, those were gifts that I picked up as at a young age to really help myself balance out. So when Life Balance was created, uh, that was it. It was truly, I want to help people, because I found all of our lives, in anybody that I've connected with, we start getting chaotic. We start spinning. We're in a hamster wheel. We're flying. Now the
Mhm.
conversation gets really picked up. My voice picks up. My energy level picks up. But where does that take a lot of people? It usually takes a lot of people into overwhelm,
Yes.
right? And I think that's where I wanted to stop it. Is that as excited and energetic as I can get, I also need a lot of balance on the opposite end of quiet and very internal pieces to that. So um, I've really been able to find the balance of, being very high end, athletic minded, energetic, like jumping out of your seat. Like you can kind of hear it in my voice right now. There's an excitement that comes with it. But at the same point, I need to be able to bring myself back out of that and go straight within and just be okay with what I feel and what I'm feeling. And that's a huge balance to really weigh out. And if I was to tell you, hey, follow my balance, you're going to be completely unbalanced. Right. And that's where I love to communicate with people, connect with people, gain perspective with people, because through that, if they're looking and searching for balance in their life, we're able to kind of point out some things that this is where you're spinning. This is where you can, and it's okay that you spin there because that's more your lifestyle, but this is how you can kind of start to offset the spin. Because I think the spin happens regardless if we're trying for it or trying not, right?
Sure.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just, do we have the tools in our toolbox to actually help us understand that spin and to be able to use it to our benefit, and then to remove ourselves from that spin and also give the other benefits of just slowing down.
Well, you and I both I grew up in Minnesota, so we're both familiar with winter, and I can relate that spin to our tires getting stuck in the snow or the ice. And the more we gun it and try to spin it, it just causes a bigger rut. And until you actually slowly move it out or use some kind of other tool to move it out, you just continue to make a bigger rut. And I think that's what happens when all you're doing is spinning in your life. You have to have some of that calm to move forward. So I think that's really a great thing. You also I know you grew up in an athletic family. Did you grow up in a military family?
No, well, a little bit, I should say. I guess my grandfather flew in World War II. He was a pilot. It was actually quite interesting to get a lot of his history in the 90s when he was in his 90s. He didn't speak about it a lot throughout his life. He was a very silent observer in our family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he was busy. He was a woodcrafter. He was did these amazing things, but he didn't speak a lot. He just kind of kept to himself. Um, and then when he got into his 90s, he started to open up to my dad, and he started to open up to the family, and we gained a little better bond when he was in his 90s. He ended up passing away at 97 about, what was that, 6 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
6 or 7 years ago. He passed away at 97 years old. And he lived to 97 because his dad lived to 95. And he said, I'm going to outlive my father. And that was kind of like his big push, is I want to outlive my dad. And he did it. And it was friggin' phenomenal. And I have been blessed in my life to have a family history where people live a long time. 60 years old is not an option in my family. 90 is.
Yeah.
It's a very legitimate option. The youngest person in my family that has passed out of my grandparents was 88. My grandma on my dad's side passed away, but her husband was my grandpa Clarence that was in the war at 97. So a little bit of military on his side, but not too much. But I do understand a little bit of that piece of it. Most of it was, you can see a picture above, my dad played professional football. And that's where a lot of my stuff comes from, is he was trained by a father that was in the military. And then he went into a line of work that was very regimented as well, which is professional athlete. So I think there's a little bit of a tie that kind of probably puts both of those together. But that was my early upbringings. Dad was a professional athlete for my first 4 years of my life. So had professional athletes all around me at all times. He was also a single dad. My parents split when I was 1. So it created an environment where I actually lived with my dad. My mom wasn't around for the first little bit, but I had professional athletes around me a lot. And the way they speak about themselves, the way they empower each other, the camaraderie, the teamwork, the family that they kind of bond and celebrate each other with is pretty special. And I think a lot of that has dribbled off. I'm just at a point right now where I'm pulling out the good pieces of all that to really use them to benefit and not just take them for granted. Because I think a lot of our lives There's things that happen that are absolutely phenomenal in our life, but that we overwhelm them with thought and kind of forget those little pieces because of that overwhelm. And if you can draw out those little pieces, man, we can do a lot with that. And that's kind of where I'm at with Life Balance right now, is I'm drawing out these little pieces that I'd forgotten about and really just took for granted that this was my life.
Yeah. When we're immersed in that, we don't understand that it's not common to everybody else, right? And being in a regimented industry like football and a team sport, you know, you learn nuances that a normal, put in quotes, a normal childhood wouldn't learn. You know, the discipline, the self-drive, the teammate, the doing things to benefit those around you, right? And so you live that very disciplined life, but yet as a boy, we have all that churning chaos. So that coming together to blend to be that calmer, life balanced person takes a lot of effort and work. But once you do it, now it's just, you know, part of your DNA, and now you're passing it on to those that you empower. So what's one of your like favorite memories of that time?
Oh, of that time. Honestly, I think one of the things that I get drawn back to over and over and over again, and it's interesting because if you were to ask me this a year ago or 3 years ago, it would have been a little bit different for sure. But recently I've really kind of grasped to my favorite piece of that era was learning to give back and learning to support others, even if that's not the intention, but it's really to be there for others. Because what I realized is in today's world, all the athletes need money for autographs and they need money for the volunteer objects that they're truly doing. If people are delusional and think that pro athletes are showing up for free, the odd guy still is. But if he has an agent, he's not. Because the agent wants the money, the player wants the money, and all these autograph sessions, all this, there's some sort of a loophole that ties them to benefiting from it some way. And the old days, and the reason I say that is I've had firsthand experience with this. My dad back in the day, they played on a hockey team. So all the players had their own like fun little hockey team. They traveled around the whole province, which would be a state to the US, and they traveled all around and played all the rec teams. So how cool would that be, right? The pro athletes are traveling around playing all these small town little rec teams that some adults have created, the moms and dads have created, right? And that was just a normal thing. They did a lot of community work. There was nothing asked anything more of that. They just loved being in the community because the community came out and paid their salary. The community came out and paid, like, spent money on tickets to come watch these guys play for 3 months of the year, right? And they got paid 12 months of the year to do this. And now I'll rewind about 5, 6, 7 years ago, somewhere in that range. We're at a Rider alumni golf tournament. So this is all the alumni have come in, and they had 4 players from the now team at that time. And one of the guys was quite high up in popularity and in the league status and stuff like that. And my dad just came around with a flag. He had a fan of somebody that he worked with over in Ireland, actually, and they had lived in Saskatchewan, and he wanted to give him a gift, and he wanted to be able to ship this over to Ireland, and it was a Saskatchewan Rough Rider flag, and he wanted to get it autographed. So he took it to this alumni tournament. He's getting all the alumni to sign on to it. There's some amazing names getting put on it, and then it comes down to these 4 players that are right now. And the one guy made a joke, "Oh, I don't know if he'll sign it. There's no money involved." And the sad reality is he said it as a joke, but it wasn't a joke at all. That player typically would actually not sign that because he has it in clause in his contract not to sign items unless there's stipulations attached to this. And that blew my mind. Wow. Because now they're not just willingly giving back. There's a stipulation to everything that they do, and that's fortunate. because I think that's really shifted our culture. And that's something that I look at. Why did I create Life Balance? It's probably because my dad did a lot of giving back when he was young. My grandparents, when they had their hotel and did different things with their garden, they were always giving their garden stuff out. They were hosting events for free at their spaces. And it's just like, I really look at all this as there was a lot of giving because they could, and they were in a position to do it. But they didn't have any strings attached. There was no carrot dangling going, hey, where are we going to get you on the next one, right? And whereas I think today, that's missing in a lot of that level. And that's, if I look back, I'm prouder of anything that's what I gained from that time is, and on top of that, there's a second piece to that. Internal confidence is another piece that I take from that era. When you walk around with professional athletes, whether it's arrogance, ego, or not, you're seeing people confident. And that doesn't mean that they're all confident in the right way, but they're confident, right? And when you see people walking like that daily as a little child, you assume that that's just life. What I realized as I got older is that's not life. That was my perspective of life, is that we just all ride at a really high internal self-belief. And what I realized when I got to school is that's not the case. I was actually one of the only kids in class that rode with that level of confidence. And don't get me wrong, there's the odd kid that has figured that out on their own, which is, I really look back now and going, that is frickin' powerful that child figured that stuff out on their own. Whereas I was getting influenced by my surroundings, right? Which I think at the end of the day, we all are. We're all influenced by our surroundings. But those are kind of the two takeaways: the give back, and then just the internal confidence. Because the key to the internal confidence, Daryl, for me was I lost it. I lost it in my teenage years, and I lost it through my 20s when I turned to drugs and alcohol and everything else. And because I didn't have the internal confidence, so I put my confidence in drugs and alcohol to make me a better person, which I think we can all pretty much tell where that ran me for about 20 years of my life. Now you're speaking to me 3 years removed from my transformation year, and really becoming a whole new version of me. I don't smoke, I don't drink. I kind of eliminated a lot of those things, and I'm slowly eliminating things that I was using as crutches to find out the true me again, because I think I had it as a little kid, and I was a phenomenal human being as a little kid. And then I lost it and really turned to substance and everything outside of me. And now it's me going, Jay, you had so many good things happen, and let's pull those things back out and find that balance that you had for so long. And just for some reason, something happened in life, stresses, whatever, and you just fell off the radar for a little bit.
I think that's, excuse me, I think that's kind of interesting, because people make a presumption that those that are raised in a good environment that you had won't stray or won't falter. They have life going really well, so why go the other way, right? People don't perceive that people who are successful or who have made it or who are doing well have problems. We all have problems, right? So growing up in the environment you did and living the life that you did, what pivoted you into the darkness?
My parents' separation and kind of the seesaw battle between the two of them. I would say between the two families. I've never talked about this, but I've actually kind of recently saw a bit of a tie to kind of some of my demise as a younger teenager. Um, Two very influential men in my life. One being my dad, professional athlete. Why wouldn't you be a little bit inspired by what he was able to do, right? He made it to that top 1%, right? Mm-hmm. How many people are trying to get to the NFL right now? How many colleges are in the US, and how many players actually make it? If I look at it, because my dad still has the letter, the Dallas Cowboys wanted him and he didn't even go to training camp because he didn't. At that time, his mental game said, you're not going to make it, but you can go home and play for your home team and make it there. At that time, the dollar figure wasn't much different. So you weren't making a financial decision. You were just making a logistics decision. And he kicks himself in the butt now, but it's just, it allows that space. But I really look at life going, these two men had everything for themselves. My dad was a professional athlete, and my grandfather owned a hotel. He had built a hotel with his dad. They were successful business people. My grandmother owned her own modeling agency. They did all that out of the hotel that was local here. When I wanted a birthday party, we went to the hotel that my grandparents owned. They had water slides. We had all this access, right? Not every kid had access to just go water slide when they wanted to and have a birthday party at a hotel whenever they wanted to. That just wasn't a reality, but it was mine. But what I look at is these two men, because something happened before, well, after I was born, but right around the time where I'm not paying attention to anything like on that scale, I'm just there, I'm one, I'm just gaining life, right?
Yeah.
My parents split because something happened, and those two men, bam, clashed, and they hated each other. And it was visible for probably the next decade plus of my life. Visible. Like they came into contact, they were screaming at each other, they were yelling at each other. I could see my grandfather, who never really lost his mind, he'd go red in the vision of my dad. And vice versa. My dad would he'd get his hair up when he was in the vision of my grandfather. And obviously, there's some male ego tensions. You hurt my daughter, blah, 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 whatever. It doesn't really matter how it all played out in their heads. But the reality is these two men I was looking up to, but they hated each other. And I think when I really look at it, is that was a huge miss piece. As I'm like, I really love how my grandfather lives his life right now and what he's established for himself 30, 40 years down the road from my dad, right? My dad's established himself really well. He's a professional athlete. He's this. I want to be that because I'm looking at all the local people in my area and they're all looking up to my dad. All the kids are looking up to my dad. All these people are looking up to my dad. So I have two men that a lot of people are looking up to. So I assume I should be looking up to them, which I do, and I want to look up to them. But then they hate each other. And I think that drew some confusion of you don't look into what they're doing as much because now you start to create this ideology of, well, maybe they're not so good at people. Because these two influential people actually don't like each other. Mm-hmm. And I think I stopped taking pieces that I should have been taking, and I started dwelling on all the wrong things in my life as opposed to embracing the good that was in my life. And when I started dwelling, the kicker is when you've lived, and here's probably the most important piece of this for me, is I was up here, right? Like the conversations I'm around, the empowerment of the men and the women that I'm around was way high. Like everybody's confident, everybody's doing this. Don't get me wrong. There's shit going on in everybody's lives, whether you're confident or not. There's battles going on, but there's a confidence level. Then you go to school and you're dealing with people down here, right? They haven't been in that environment to get that and gain that confidence yet, right? They haven't been influenced to be at that level yet of internal confidence. And you see that struggle and you're bouncing back and forth as a kid trying to figure out where do you fit, right? And when you're doing that bounce back and forth, you start to believe the other voices because there's more of the other voices not believing in themselves, also believing that I had a terrible life going on because my parents split at one. And I started to dwell on that. And I really dwelled on, well, you don't have the parents that split at one. Well, my mom effed off on me when I was one and all these different things. And you really start to like dwell because actually a lot of the conversation started to go, well, how are you doing, Jay? Are you okay with your parents being split? And are you okay? Well, actually I was, because I'd already lived like 9 years that way. But because people keep picking and and I don't know if it's for their benefit or they're actually trying to help or they're just not using the right wordings, but people actually like influenced me in a sense to really buy into I had a problem and my life was not as good as it was. And I bought into it. So then I ended up running away from my dad at 16 years old to go live with my mom, and boom, everything flipped into a gong show because she was a runner, which is why she left for the first 10 years of my life in the first place, is she was a runner. Stress hit her, the hamster wheel started, and how many people out here listening to this are runners? Here's a prime example. She was a runner and she ran from me. She came back when she realized and healed and did some of the right things, but she ran because of stress. And when she came back, the unfortunate part is she didn't do enough healing, and I didn't either. So now I blamed her for a decade of leaving me with, hey, can you go pick me up a case of beer? Can you go buy me a pack of smokes? Can you go do this? Can you go do that? And all of a sudden, where's my habits?
Mhm.
Where's my stuff going? And that was the transition point, was kind of when my mom came back in my life and I had two parents to really play the easel with. I picked the easy route, which was alcohol and drugs. And I left my professional football career in the past, if I really look at it, early. As much as I didn't think I was doing it, because I was still one of the top athletes around, smoking, drinking, and being crazy, uh, I wasn't putting the effort in. So when I got to the certain level of junior football at 19, 20 years old, I wasn't able to compete with that eliteness anymore, because I'd actually started dropping like crazy, because I got into all this other, I got into drugs, alcohol, and the substance that was, I guess, what I thought I needed to be able to be that happy, bubbly person. And it wasn't. So I would say in that kind of swing, there was a lot that happened, but it would be a lot of the tug of war between, I was super confident. I was around a lot of people that aren't confident. They asked questions and I didn't have the answers. So I just started to believe them more than I believed myself.
We truly do become a piece of those that we surround ourselves with, which is why I think a positive community is so vital for people's growth. Even though it's an individual journey, I think you need to be around those people that will hold you accountable and keep you in the plus side of life instead of the negative side of life. Now, you're married with children.
Correct.
How long have you been married?
We've been married 5 years.
Okay, so you met your wife in the midst of this, because you said you're only three years removed from it.
From my main transformation. So I've
Yeah.
known Jen for just shy of 10 years now. So it's been about 9.5 years we've known each other, and then we've been married for 5 of them.
So because you were in the midst of your darkness, what pivoted you? I mean, we're all fortunate to have a good woman who loves us in spite of ourselves, right? I'm on that testimony as well. But what pivoted you from that back into the more positive direction that you've taken your life since?
There's a couple, and there's two major events I would say that I'll peg it to. And then there's probably a lot of pieces that also established within that, but there's two major events. One, my daughter was born. Um, well, I'm going to say three actually. I met my wife, number one. She was somebody that was struggling as well internally. The outside surface looked amazing, right? But the person was hurting. And it was just for the same reasons I was hurting, right? Like just misunderstandings of my own internal workings, looking for something. She was on a journey already. So Jen, when I first met her, she just finished yoga teacher training. So she just kind of gotten into this world of like trying to find inner peace and da 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 da. She also works in a very stressful industry in the financial world. So it kind of like, for her, it was trying to balance a lot of things. So she went into yoga teacher training. So when I first met that, I saw that piece of, ooh, I like that, because that brought me back to my grandma when I was young, right? So like, I started seeing, if I look at it, that was kind of, there's some similarities, and it started the progress of opening my mind.
Right.
Okay. It opened the door. Now, fast forward 5 years, 6 years, our daughter arrives. I melted on my floor of my daughter's bedroom one of the nights I put her down and just lost it. And probably the part that hurt me the most is I just couldn't figure out how my mom walked away from me, right? And that was the moment that really pushed. And that would have been like one of the bigger catalysts of change, because I was the father, and I can't fathom walking away from my child. I can't. However, through this journey of parenthood, I have also realized how my mom did. She was so hamster wheeled and stressed out, and chaos that happened in her life around the divorce and other things that would have been happening at that exact time, She couldn't deal with life, so what did she do? She ran. And I think I'm speaking to about 75% of the population right then and there is, what do we do when shit hits the fan? Most of us don't sit in it. We run. We get out, right? And she did that. And I can respect why she did it now. And that's what brought me the ease, is that moment I didn't respect it because I had a daughter and all that. But that opened the door for me to start kind of looking at these different avenues of how she was able to walk away from me. Not that it was great for me or her, but at the end of the day, I think it was great for me because she wasn't in a stable space to actually raise me properly, which I probably would have been in a lot more turmoil earlier and longer and maybe deeper if she hung around, because she was just stuck in this wheel. But by the time she came back, she was healing. And that's why she came back, to heal. And I think, unfortunately, I just was in the wrong mind frame as a teenager to really spin that. So my daughter being born and me realizing, how did my mom walk away from this, was like a really big piece. And then lastly, the main trigger was I was working at a retail store in 2019. I started working there. I was trying to get out of doing labor work. I was an electrician. I was a landscaper. I was a lot of labor, and I kind of thought that that was my journey. I'm just going to be a laborer for the rest of my life and going to have to grind out this body because I don't have brains. And I really convinced myself I don't have brains. I just got a body, and kind of ran that line. And anyway, I wanted to branch out. So I got a job in a retail store for the first time, and 37 years old. And I just kind of looking at this going, this is my spot. I like it. I've got people around me. I was fit in hockey skates, live in Canada. What do? We play hockey. So why not put yourself in a hockey store? And I had a great opportunity to be there. Within 2 months, Daryl, I was the #1 skate fitter in Western Canada, in their opinion. They had people, I analyzed the situation so well. And this is also some of these tools that I slowly started to bring out of what I'm good at. And I was able to just listen to people. And through their words, and not just your words, but could have been somebody else's words that speaks of a similar issue and feeling, I was able to use everybody's info to maximize the comfort in somebody's foot in a skate and performance, just by listening to other people speak about their experiences by trying different skates on and the feelings that their feet would feel. And I'd be analyzing what their feet looked like, and somehow was able to trap all this and give these people maximum fits, like amazing fits. So anyways, I got a huge reputation. People were coming to see me to get their skates fit. I'm getting people's fit. They have bumps, like skates can sometimes create cysts in your feet from just being a bad fit ultimately. I was getting people to have fun skates for the first time in 30 years. They didn't realize that we can manipulate a skate to fit their foot. And we were able to do that. So anyways, had all these things amazing going on. I'm hitting bonuses and I'm doing all these amazing things for the store, but the boss doesn't pay me my bonus. And then I started going, well, how come this is happening? Like I'm rocking it. Like, and you're even telling me like I'm doing good, and you're even telling me I'm like the best skate fitter in Western Canada. Like, why aren't you paying me my bonus? Like, don't I deserve it? And then I started to realize it's not in my hands. It's in somebody else's hands. When you're in these situations, you can bust your ass, you can do all the great things, but when you're doing it under somebody else's roof, it's really up to them to make that decision. And what I realized is he could tell me anything, but his actions spoke deeper. And I think that is something that I've always believed, is you can tell me anything, but it's your actions that are truly going to mean and do what you truly mean deep down at this moment of your life, right? And I started to look at that, and I'm like, man, this is just not the fit for me. Like, something's up. And he exploded on me one day that was completely unprofessional, and I lost my mind about it a little bit. I confronted him and I called him out on it, but at the same point, it wasn't going to do much. And so I kept staying there, and he kept not paying the bonus. And I had a little bit of a tie. My best friend at the time and my best man at my wedding was also the general manager of this store, and that's how I got in there. He's sitting there handcuffed because this guy's. So now I'm battling a little bit of a friendship thing, because he is the guy that's supposed to be paying me the bonus, and his boss isn't allowing him to pay me the bonus. And it's just kind of, it's an internal thing that's getting to me now. And I'm starting to lose my confidence after I just skyrocketed back to that little kid, right? I'm doing a lot of good for these people. And it goes into, honestly, the pandemic hadn't hit us yet, Daryl, so none of that's an excuse yet of just kind of being laid off or anything. And I'm looking for something different. We walk into a meeting almost a year to the date. We're about 2 weeks out from the year to the date, or 3 years to the date. And I walked into this management meeting, and the boss goes to me, and the other 6 managers, I was a supervisor in there, and he kicks this Friday morning meeting off with, "I don't mean to be rude, you guys, but none of you in here are ever going to make as much money as I have lost." And I just was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, it just in my head, I'm just like, are you that pathetic? That like it's just that you didn't comprehend that before you even told your management. Because in my opinion, for where I come from, that does not fuel my fire to go make you more money.
Right.
Period. That completely deflated me to go help him.
Right.
And what it did was it lit the internal fire that, God damn it, my whole life I put myself in a position for people to just sweep up that rotten crumb and shove it in a corner and forget about me. And I let them. And be damned if I'm ever going to let that happen again. And I'm going to empower others so that they don't have to feel this shit either. And that's where it began. I didn't know how it was going to happen, Daryl. I joined an MLM. I started doing personal growth and all this stuff. I'm no longer with the MLM because that's not where I was supposed to go. But it was an opportunity, and it started creating doors to open up. And the reality is, regardless of where I've gone, personal growth was the number one thing that people encouraged me to do. Get into reading books, get into doing this, get into doing that. I hadn't read a book in my life. Now, what do? I have Audible. I got books going through my head all the time. I got podcasts going through my head all the time. Because where do we get our information now? Podcasts, other people, their stories, all that type of stuff, and ways that they've created tools around their life from their circumstances. So I started to pull all this stuff together. And the number one thing that I learned in all these books, Daryl, own your own shit.
Mm-hmm.
And when I really started to look at that and be honest with myself, everything changed. And it hasn't been an easy 3 years. It's actually been a disastrous 3 years if you look at it from some people's perspectives. And to mine, it's been friggin' beautiful. Because as shitty as it feels at times, and as hard as it the uphill seems to be, the benefits of being able to grow and become a better version of yourself outweigh it all. And what I'm being able to show my kids and change their projection on life, because I was negative when they were first born. But now I'm that upbeat, positive person. And what do we flourish out to our kids when we walk into public? Our kids are just those happy-go-lucky connectors. And people tell us how much of a connector our children are to their, their kids or their teachers or parents. Like, they just go in, and that tells me that we're doing the right things and that we're being able to change our lives for the benefit of them. And I think at the end of the day, that's really what kind of spurred it all on. And there's a lot to that, obviously, but those are the major impacts. But that boss is the one that was the complete catalyst to flip and go, I'm not feeling this little small crumb anymore. I am way better than that. This man above my head taught me that you can be the pinnacle if you want to be, but you got to put the work in and you got to go there. You don't let other people determine that for you. You determine that for you. And this was just a prime example. This man, as much as he says he wants the best for everybody, and I've heard him say that of his own mouth, that he does, and I truly believe that he means that. But his management skills and his money greed overrides his true personal beliefs, and he treats people like shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of businessmen and women out there are like that because they're caught in a mindset that's not just quite right, and we put people down as opposed to empowering them to become the best version of themselves. And I'm not saying everybody needs to be an entrepreneur and work for themselves out there, but I can definitely tell you, you need to find people that actually want the best for you and don't just want to make a buck off of you. And that's kind of what my big push is now, is empower people to put themselves in that position. I don't care what you do in your life. I don't care if you make $15,000 a year, if you make $40 million a year. I don't care. But put yourself in a position that you can live empowered every day and not have people drive you down because it makes them feel better.
I think that's a huge distinction. And I worked in corporate America for a long time, and I see it over and over again. It's why I, have left so many companies, because I don't feel comfortable in that injustice that you just described, and it bothers me to no end. When I was working for the university here, I was helping people get their doctorate degree, and management would use my calls with the students, and these students were in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 70s, right? They were high-level executives trying to get their PhD, or teachers trying to become principals, and they need the doctorate to get that. So they were very successful in their career, and management would use my calls with these people as training calls for other people, but then they tell me that my KPIs aren't good enough. And I basically told every one of my managers, I don't give a shit about your KPIs. I give a shit about my students, and I will do what's right for them, not what's right for you. And if you don't like it, fire me. And they never once fired me. But it's interesting because our manager had an office on the floor with us. We were in a big call center. And in her office, there was also a back door to the parking lot. And we knew that when people went in the front door, they may not come back out the front door, right? They would go back to the back door. So people on the floor started getting afraid to have to be called to her office, because often it meant you weren't coming back out of there, right?
Yeah.
So I used to start calling it Narnia. Like, don't be afraid to go in the closet and go out the back, because out the back is where your blessings and the better part of your life is going to be. If you're so miserable here, take that pivot to go somewhere else, right? And I applaud you that you had the courage to take that step and say, I'm going to go do something else. Because a lot of people will sit and complain about that situation, and they'll stay in that situation, but they won't change that situation. So I applaud you for doing that. Two last questions for you. Those that are listening here today, what's the one piece of advice that you would give them to empower their life?
One of the major things I think I would honestly say is, you are 1,000% good enough the way you are. Now it's just put yourself around the conversations and the information that educates you to actually know what you want to know in this world. And we are only as strong as our surroundings. And I mean, books are our surrounding, podcasts are our surroundings. What we put ourselves in as a surrounding, we are only as strong as that. Because what I've really learned in life is, you only know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. And you cannot put any stress or strenuous activity around that, because you flat out do not know what you do not know. And it goes for, I can explain that with that boss too, right? That boss, he didn't know, because I can flat out tell you, I go over to my best friend that was in that same friggin' meeting. Do you think he took it the way I did?
No.
He took it real. Like, no, I'm never going to make as much money as you've lost. And he just walked with it like nothing, because that was normal. But because I knew that professionalism was a possibility, right? Like, you can make it to the pinnacle. You can be the greatest CEO. You can be a professional football player, soccer player, whatever you want to create. I saw that as a possibility in my life. So when he said that to me, I was like, I've been there before, and I'm going back, because I am sick and tired of this type of conversation. And I would just say to you, if you've never been in a conversation that empowers you, you got to start searching for a new circle. and it's a new circle, whether it's a book club that you're in, whether it's podcasts community that you're in. Like, these are all communities, my friends out there. We've joined communities that we're part of. It's just, you get around people that think and speak a little bit similar to you, and now life makes a lot more sense, because you're not fighting every conversation that somebody doesn't believe the way you believe, and you can start gaining the information that you actually want to make that change and truly empower you to put yourself in a position that you've always dreamt of. You just didn't know was actually possible because you didn't know what you didn't know.
And that leads me perfectly into my final question that I ask all my guests. You're a part of my community and my tribe, as I am yours. And I've named this a warrior spirit for a reason. What does a warrior spirit mean to you?
Warrior spirit means to me is you are fully capable yourself. You have to dig in to find that. And that's the warrior spirit, is truly understanding that you are capable of anything that you set your mind to achieve. The kicker is believe in yourself and empower yourself to be that person, because there's not a single person in this world that can stop you if you start to believe in yourself to that level. And it's just the reality of it. And I think 95% of the world is not telling you that. And what I'm here to say with Daryl, because I know Daryl believes similarly, is it's within you when you believe it. And once you believe it, you will conquer absolutely any dream you set out to go do, because I'm actually living the dreams that I set out to do when I was 10, 11, and 12. I wanted to live in a house that I built with my family, a mom and a dad in the same house raising 2 kids. And it's the exact family I grew up in. My sister is 3.5 years older than me. My daughter is 3 years and 3 days older than my son. If you literally look at the replication of my life, I replicated what I wanted to a T. How do you pick a daughter and a son at the same ages, right? How do you pick all this? But I'm a mom and a dad in the same house that I was able to build for my family. And those are dreams that I set out at 10, 11, and 12. I thought I wanted to be a professional athlete, Daryl. Deep down, my dream was to hold a family together and be there for my kids. And that's what I'm doing. And that's what I'm starting to realize. So believe me, my friends, you might not always understand the path that's going forward for you.
For sure.
But if you believe in yourself, you will achieve it.
Absolutely. And I love that definition. And I applaud you for turning your life back around and giving empowerment to others through your own journey. I appreciate you joining me today, Jason, and may 2023 be our best year ever, and for those that we impact along the way. So thank you, and have a blessed rest of your day.
Appreciate the opportunity, Daryl. Much love.
Thanks.